Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So far, we've explored some fantastic lightning leveling builds for the monk, as well as some cold builds tailored for the endgame. But there's a whole world of builds out there waiting to be tested and optimized. And that's why I've been experimenting with different setups, pushing through higher tier maps to find the most efficient and satisfying options for endgame content to provide you guys with a fully detailed guide. In today's video, we're diving into what I like to call one of the laziest monk builds, yet one with absolutely massive potential. The Stormwave Monk build. This build is not only beginner friendly and effective during leveling, but also scales into an incredible clearing machine capable of handling high tier maps and breaches with ease. This build has two very specific paths for endgame content that you can upgrade to depending on what you'd like to play. And we will cover all these potential paths that you can take in this video, from the core abilities and support gems to the ideal gear stats, passive skill tree, and rotation for all three paths of the Stormwave Monk build. If you have any questions or want to share your thoughts, drop a comment down below, and if you find this guide helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Path of Exile 2 builds and guides. With that said, let's begin. So the early version of this build only uses two abilities. The star of the show is of course Stormwave, supported by Charged Staff to amplify its power. And since Charged Staff only needs to be activated once every 30 to 45 seconds, you're essentially playing with just one primary ability. The rest of your ability slots are filled with incredible defensive auras, power charge generators, and a few other skills that further boost your damage output. While this early build can be used as early as leveling, it is also really good for early endgame mapping too, and with time can be upgraded to one of the two paths we will discuss later and make it a complete powerhouse for higher tier maps. We're gonna start by covering the basics of the build, then move on to the advanced upgrades for higher end gameplay. Let's begin with the core ability, Stormwave. Stormwave is the centerpiece of this build. It unleashes a wave of lightning across the ground, dealing damage to everything in its path. The default range is 8 meters long and 1 meter wide, with 80% of physical damage converted to lightning damage. For support gems, we have Martial Tempo for increased attack speed, Electrocute for charge generation, and Upheaval, which is where things get really interesting. Although the support gem Upheaval reduces the damage and speed of each wave, it creates 2 additional waves, giving you a total of 3. This means that while individual waves may hit slightly weaker, the combined damage of all 3 waves makes this build devastating. With some practice, you can position yourself closer to rares or bosses, hitting them with all 3 waves at once, which is often enough to 1 or 2 shot them. Next up, we've got Charged Staff. Charged Staff empowers your quarterstaff, boosting the damage of any abilities originating from your weapon. To use it effectively, you'll need to generate power charges. Each charge amplifies the power of Charged Staff, with the default maximum being 3 charges. The cool part about this build is that it ensures that you're consistently at maximum power charges, and all you need to do is simply refresh Charged Staff before it expires. This creates a seamless loop of enhanced damage. For support gems, Charged Staff uses Persistence to extend its duration, Overcharge to improve charge generation, and of course, Conduction to increase the chance of shocking enemies. The next 2 abilities that we have is Herald of Thunder and Combat Frenzy. These are the aura buffs and are critical to this build and should be your top priority. Herald of Thunder passively deals lightning damage to any mob within its range, helping you clear entire packs with ease through its chain lightning effect triggered by Stormwave. It synergizes beautifully with this build, enhancing your overall damage output. For support gems, you'll want Magnified Effect to increase its range, ensuring better coverage, and Elemental Focus for a significant boost to its damage. Combat Frenzy serves you as the Frenzy Charge Generator. Whenever you freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy while this aura is active, it generates frenzy charges. However, to convert these frenzy charges into power charges, which are essential for fueling Charged Staff, you need a specific node on your skill tree, Resonance. Without Resonance, frenzy charges will accumulate but won't be usable, so make sure to unlock this node as soon as you get Combat Frenzy. The key support gem for Combat Frenzy is Profusion, which gives you a 50% chance to grant an additional charge, maximizing your charge generation potential. To activate both Herald of Thunder and Combat Frenzy, you're gonna need 60 Spirit. During Act 1 to 3 on both Normal and Cruel difficulty, you can earn permanent Spirit boosts by defeating specific side bosses. Beyond that, there are 2 ways to ensure you meet the Spirit requirement. Either equip gear with Spirit bonuses on, or invest your first or second Ascendancy point into Lead Me Through Grace, a node that provides Spirit based on the evasion rating and energy shield stats on your chest piece. This is the recommended choice I'd advise you to take. Once you set up Herald of Thunder and Combat Frenzy, the next step is to prioritize 2 defensive auras: Wind Dancer and Grim Feast. Wind Dancer enhances your evasion, helping you avoid incoming damage. Additionally, it knocks back enemies when you take a hit. For support gems on Wind Dancer, equip Pin, Blind, and Main, all of which add crowd control effects to hinder enemy movement and attacks. And then we have Grim Feast, which is one of the most overpowered defensive auras in the game. This aura generates remnants, small white orbs that drop when you kill mobs. Picking up these orbs restores your energy shield, which can even overflow beyond your maximum capacity, making this aura a lifesaver in high-stress situations. The best support gems for this is Vitality to enhance his restorative effects and Cannibalism for additional defensive boosts. By setting up these 4 auras with Stormwave and Charged Staff, the initial phase of the build is done. With just these abilities, you're able to get into Endgame and clear the lower tier maps with ease. So let's take a look at what we need from the passive skill tree. The ascendancy we want to choose is of course Invoker, and with the first 2 trials you complete, you should go for Sunder My Enemies for significant damage boost and Lead Me Through Grace for the extra spirit generation through your chest piece. Next up, we want to build into speed, attack damage, lightning damage, and most importantly, crit, while also getting a few nodes for mana regeneration and of course defensives. Our first priority is to get Resonance, and you can get this node in just 16 points. However, if you don't have Combat Frenzy, there is absolutely no point in getting this early, but make sure that you have it when you get Combat Frenzy. So from the skill tree, we want to get nodes like Essence of the Storm, Crashing Wave, and Flow State, before making our way to Conservative Casting for that mana regen, Tenfold attacks for the speed, and Killer Instinct for the extra damage. From there, we go up to Resonance, True Strike for the Jugular, Deadly Force, and Deep Trance. Our next priority is to get Wild Storm, Throat Seeker, and of course our Quarterstaff nodes, Martial Artistry, and Whirling Assault. From there, we want to enhance our damage a little bit more with Coming Calamity, while we also boost our defensives with Enhanced Reflexes and Bestial Skin. At this point, we want to go back a little bit and get ourselves some extra defensives with Mindful Awareness and then Step Like Mist for some extra speed, mana regen, as well as dexterity and intelligence. At this point, you are well into the endgame, so you can follow the path of this build based on what you need the most. Regarding the choices you want to make on the attribute nodes, it all depends on what you need for your equipped gear and abilities. Usually I'm balancing dexterity and intelligence as they both provide me with great results in this build. For your jeweled sockets, you want to aim for as much crit as you can and of course any lightning damage you can get. Same applies to your gear. The quarterstaff you want to aim for should have very high physical damage as we convert that physical to lightning, and any additional elemental or lightning damage is always welcome. On your chest piece, you want to aim for as much evasion and energy shield as possible for that extra spirit, and when it comes down to the other attributes, you want to prioritize lightning damage, crit, and of course your resistances. Now, the rotation of this build is very simple. You simply want to spam Stormwave to clear anything and everything in front of you. Combat Frenzy will do its thing and generate the charges passively, which you will then consume on Charged Staff so you can empower your waves. Herald of Thunder will assist you with even more AoE damage, and the rest of the auras will help you stay alive. Using your dodge here and there will help you position yourself better when things get a bit hectic and place your waves at a better angle to hit more enemies. For rares or boss fights, the same principle applies, but the only difference is that you want to try and hit that single target with as many waves as you can. With a little bit of practice, this will become easier over time. Now, following this early build will definitely get you from early leveling to at least tier 5 or 6 of the endgame maps. Up at that point, you will be able to find better gear, more spirit, collect more currencies, and get higher levels to be able to convert into one of the two Storm Path builds that we're about to see. There is no proper name for either of those builds since they both use Stormwave as their prime ability, so I'll make something up so we can be on the same page on this. We have the automatic Stormwave build and the manual Stormwave build. The core abilities of these two builds are nearly identical, but the backbone of their setups and rotations is what sets them apart. Both are incredibly powerful for endgame, reaching tier 15s and over, and the reason I'm presenting you with these options here is so you can be able to choose an upgrade path right away rather than waiting for a follow-up video to the basic Stormwave build guide. So let's start by examining the abilities both builds share. Then we're gonna dive into the respective support gems, rotation, and unique mechanics. Both builds rely on the following core skills for offensive, utility, and defense. Stormwave, which is the primary AoE ability for both. Charge Staff, which is the way to consume charges generated. Tempest Flurry and Tempest Bell, used for single target burst damage, ideal for bosses or tough rares on both builds. Herald of Ice, which is the aura that helps with all the explosions on both builds. Unbound Avatar, a trigger-based ability that boosts your damage output significantly. You get this through your and Wind Dancer are a defensive aura that provides evasion and knockback effects when hit. These are the abilities that both builds share. Here are where things are different. The automatic Stormwave build uses Combat Frenzy to generate frenzy charges, which are then converted to power charges using resonance, which is why I call this build automatic. The manual build relies on Hand of Chayula, which dashes to the target, marking them with the curse of your choice and then generating the charges that way. Another difference of abilities, the automatic build uses Cast of Shock with a special ability called Comet to passively rain down comets to all enemies when enough energy is generated, whilst the manual build uses Elemental Invocation with Eye of Winter, which becomes a triggering ability when the energy is full that you can use whenever you please for more damage. And lastly, the automatic build runs with Blink, which replaces your dodge roll with a blink instead that has a slight cooldown, while the manual Stormwave build has Grim Feast as an extra defensive aura. The support gems you want on Stormwave for the automatic build are Upheaval, Innervate, Ambush, Primal Armament, and Heft, while you want Inspiration, Longshot, Primal Armament, Heft, and Ambush on the manual build. The difference is that the automatic build plays with 3 waves instead of 1 on Stormwave, while the manual build plays with only 1 wave that's damage and range is significantly increased. On Charge Staff, you want Persistence, Overcharge, and Conduction on the automatic, and Perpetual Charge, Electrocute, and Persistence on the manual. On Tempest Flurry, you want Martial Tempo, Electrocute, Practice Combo, and Lightning Infusion on the automatic build, and Martial Tempo, Practice Combo, Ice Bite, and Rage on the manual. The difference here is that the automatic build focuses on generating charges with its Tempest Flurry instead of Charge Staff through Electrocute since it has Combat Frenzy, while the manual build focuses on more cold damage and bonus damage through Ice Bite and Rage. For Tempest Bell, we want to go Close Combat, Overabundance, Concentrated Effect, and Leverage for the automatic build, and Concentrated Effect, Close Combat, and Rage Forged for the manual. For Unbound Avatar, the support gems are almost identical with a small addition to the manual build. They both run Fire and Lightning Mastery, with Cold Mastery added to the manual build as it focuses on all 3 elements. The support gems for Wind Dancer are the same for both builds, Pin, Blind, and Maim. On Herald of Ice, you want to go with Cold Infusion, Cold Mastery, and Magnified Effect on the automatic build, and Cold Infusion, Magnified Effect, and Innervate on the manual build. For Combat Frenzy, we want to stick to Profusion, while for the Hand of Chayula, we want to go for an ability called Sniper's Mark. When you use Hand of Chayula to dash to the target, it will leave a mark for 8 seconds. When you critically hit the target with the mark, you will get yourself a charge. With the amount of crit that we have, it's really easy to stack up on the charges. We're going to take a look at the rotation later on, but for now, the support gems that you want on Hand of Chayula, other than the Sniper's Mark ability, is Profusion of course, and Conductivity to lower the resistance levels of your enemies. Then we have Cast of Shock and Elemental Invocation. For Cast of Shock, you want to equip the ability called Comet. When active, Cast of Shock will generate energy, and when it hits 100%, then it will cast whatever ability we added. In this case, we added Comet. which means that every time it goes to 100% energy, a rain of comets will hit the ground, dealing insane amount of damage to the enemies. Support gems on this are Impetus, Inspiration, and Energy Retention to have a smoother generation of energy. Similar to this, we'll add the ability called Eye of Winter on Elemental Invocation. Eye of Winter releases a ball of ice that constantly throws shards, dealing damage. Apart from generating energy, Elemental Invocation allows you to manually decide when and where you want Eye of Winter to hit. This becomes an additional triggering ability in your action bars. Support gems we want on this are Impetus once again, Cold Exposure, and Energy Retention. Lastly, on Blink you want Ingenuity and Clarity for mana regen and cooldown recovery, and Clarity and Precision on Grim Feast. And that covers all of the abilities and all the support gems for both of these builds. The passive skill tree though remains the same as the basic Stormwave build we mentioned earlier in this video for the automatic build, apart from one very simple change. Instead of going I am the Thunder on the Ascendancy, you want to simply go for I am the Blizzard. But for the manual tree though, we do have some important changes that we want to do. For example, instead of investing your points into Essence of the Storm and Flow State, it's better to go for Echoing Frost, Lightning, and Fire. Instead of Deep Trance, Killer Instinct, and Tenfold attacks, you go for Melding, Critical Exploit, and Falcon Technique. Apart from these and a few other nodes, the rest of the base is the same. Now when it comes down to gear, everything we covered in the basic Stormwave build still applies. However, there's one item that stands out as absolutely essential for both builds to truly dominate the endgame: the Pulsar Ring. This unique ring is a game changer. While it can be obtained randomly as a drop, it's often easier to purchase it from other players. I've tested both of these builds extensively without the Pulsar Ring, and while I was still able to clear higher tier maps, the difference with the ring equipped was massive. The standout feature of this ring is its effect. Enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered as though frozen. This mechanic is incredibly potent when paired with specific abilities and skill tree nodes that we already have. It allows you to chain explosions by shattering chilled enemies, resulting in devastating AoE damage that can obliterate entire packs with a single tap. It's also very important to have a specific amount of cold damage as well, as this will also increase the amount of explosions that happen through Herald of Ice and this ring's feature. If you right click on Stormwave, you should be able to see the cold damage of the ability, and you want to aim for at least 300. 300 plus should be enough to be able to one-tap the screen with both builds. Primary difference between the two builds lies in their approach to control and gameplay style. The first build emphasizes simplicity and automation, requiring minimal input for abilities like Comet or Eye of Storm, as well as charge generation. This hands-off approach makes the gameplay more accessible and easier to master, with fewer triggering abilities to manage. It's straightforward, beginner-friendly, and a lot of fun to play without overthinking mechanics. On the other hand, the manual build offers more control and flexibility. You get to decide when to engage, generate charges, and trigger abilities like Elemental Invocation. While it does add a few extra abilities to your action bar, making the setup seem more complex at first, the payoff is a highly engaging and dynamic playstyle. Despite their differences though, both options deliver unique and enjoyable experiences suited to different playstyle. I honestly had a lot of fun experimenting with both builds, and once you adapt to them, they become very easy to understand. For example, the rotation for the automatic build is very simple. You spam Stormwave to send out 3 waves to all of your enemies, which makes clearing maps very easy and fast. You want to use Blink to escape dangerous situations or increase your clear speed. If you're facing multiple packs and rares at the same time, using Unbound Avatar will enhance your damage significantly and help you clear them out faster. If you face harder rares or smaller bosses, then ensure that you hit them with all 3 waves or Stonewave to increase your damage potential. When you're facing a single target, usually a harder boss, then your rotation changes. You solely use Tempest Flurry, which will start generating charges into Charge Staff, then Tempest Bell, and Unbound Avatar. Focus all of your Tempest Flurry hits on the bell and the boss will melt. In both AoE and single target scenario, you will always have Cast on Shock passively throwing the random comet every now and then. And that's basically it for the automatic build. The manual build has similar features of gameplay with some slight adjustments. You want to engage on your enemies with Hand of Chayula for the curse mark, then spam Stormwave to kill that pack. Then rinse and repeat until you have at least 1 to 3 charges for Charged Staff. Even though it's definitely not necessary to always play with your Charged Staff active, it does provide you with a pretty decent damage boost. Herald of Ice and the Ring will allow you to almost one-tap anything, so if you get into the habit of dash, Stormwave, then you'll be able to keep an 100% uptime. If you're dealing with loads of packs and or rares at the same time, then Unbound Avatar and especially Elemental Invocation will come in handy to significantly increase your damage. For single target, you want to firstly use Hand of Chayula into Tempest Flurry, Charged Staff, Unbound Avatar, Elemental Invocation, and Tempest Bell for the ultimate burst. And that's the fully detailed Stormwave Monk Guide covering 3 different builds that can take you from early leveling all the way to tier 15 maps. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for more Path of Exile 2 class guides and content. Don't forget to comment down below if you have any questions or thoughts regarding this guide. As always, I'm going to do my best to reply to each and every one of you. Thank you very much for the amazing support. I'm going to see you guys on the next one. Peace.